Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the MWBL podcast, and today we have a very entertaining episode. And let's introduce our normal guests here. We have Andrew Robison.
What's up, guys?
Nick Grabowski.
What's up, guys?
And Xavier Hernandez.
What's up?
Alright, we're going to start this thing off with Monday's games, where we had the Weasels defeat the Neverlands 4-3, and Andrew Mackey absolutely destroyed the Neverlands. And it's hard to not think that the Neverlands are going to win a game, because they're I think 0-6 right now, which is not a good look for your whole team in general. So we're going to go to Nick. Do you think the Neverlands will win a game after this close game with the Weasels?
No, I don't think so. The one Araceli homer, the 3-run homer, was very promising, though. But I think next game they play, I believe Neverlands play Team Dinger, and I think that's gonna be one of those games that both teams are in last right now. But I do think they still won't get the win, but it's gonna be a tough game. But that might be their closest game.
All right, thank you, Nick. And we're going to go over to Xavier. Do you think the Neverlands are going to win the game after this close match with the Weasels?
They definitely have a chance. It's going to be pretty close between them and Dinger. However, Dinger has something to play for, and they're looking to get the number 2 seed out there in the NL with a win and the Pounders loss. But yeah, I think that it's going to be rough for the Neverlands the rest of the season. I don't see them getting a win all year, and I wasn't there for their game yesterday, but it seems like they put up a fight, and I think that's promising for next year, and not even the playoffs.
All right, we're going to end off the Weasels versus Neverlands with Andrew Robson. Do you think that Neverlands have a chance of winning the game this season?
I think they do. I think every team, like I said, I think last episode, you cannot count any team out in this league. I mean, they fought really well with the Weasels only losing by 1 run. I think that was pretty impressive for a team that's winless to lose by 1 to a solid team. So yeah, I think they definitely could win next week, but like I said, it's going to be tough for them to win that game. So yeah.
All right, thank you, Andrew. We're going to go on to our second game of Monday, which was quite possibly the craziest game of the season so far. And it was the Gators defeating the Pounders 1-0. And this game went 8 innings, or more so 7 2/3 of innings, and Nick Grabowski hit a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 8th, and he struck out 13, and Navarro struck out 12, and those two pitchers went back and forth for the whole game, making it stretch for that long. And speaking of Nick Grabowski, we're going to go over to him, and how did you feel about this game and your performance?
Well, I was not feeling good at the plate until that one double that I hit, and then I felt a little more confident that I can get a nice little base hit after base hit, and then finally ball. But pitching, ball was coming good today. Yesterday. I was feeling good on the mound. It just once we'd get out of there, I'd just run back out there because I felt so good on the mound. 13 strikeouts. I just kept throwing mixes of speed. I just throw the slider, and then I throw a cutter, and just keep them off balance. Good after that game, but felt really good to win that game. Coach Indiana.
Yeah, you hit me in the face with one of those cutters during that game, by the way. We're gonna go over to a player on the Pounders, Andrew Robson. How did you feel about taking that L after a strong and really long game against the Gators?
That was pretty heartbreaking for me personally. I was face down in the grass for like a minute. I was pretty upset about that loss, but what can you do, man? The game couldn't go on forever, so it had to end at some time, and they just came out on top, and we got unlucky there, but it's wiffle ball, man. What can you do?
All right, thank you, Andrew. Mind you, this game was played in a 2v2 form since the Pounders were missing Junior Pelikas and the Gators were missing Xavier Hernandez. And speaking of Xavier, we're going to end it off with Xavier here. And how do you feel about your squad pulling it off after 8 innings of, destruction?
Yeah, it was a very important game for both teams, I believe. But it just goes to show the fight that the Pounders show every game. I mean, this team never gives up, and you know, I was asking what the score was throughout the game. I was asking different people and wondering what was going on and stuff. And then I heard it was 0-0 at the top of the fourth. So I realized that it was one of our only games that went into extra innings this year, and I wasn't really surprised. Both these teams are really, you know, they show a lot of grit and they show a lot of, you know, fight for their teams. You know, they want to win. And I saw that it was in the eighth, and then Nick went live, and I heard that he hit a walk-off home run, and it just, you know, like I said, just goes to show what kind of fight both teams show. And I'm glad they pulled it out.
All right, thank you, Xavier. We're going to move on to our next subject, which is our Tuesday games, which happened today. We had Blue Whales defeating Dinger, and it was quite the exciting game because John Paul Campos threw the first ever no-hitter in MWBL history, and it was a really good game for the Blue Whales in general, winning 4-0. And Andrew Robison, do you think that John Paul Campos can be back in the running for Cy Young after his no-hitter, or do you think that Xavier and Nick are just too powerful for him?
I still believe Nick and Xavier are way too powerful. I mean, get their no-hitter against one of the worst teams in the league, and Team Dinger. No offense, though, but they are pretty bad now that they lost to Xavier. So, yeah, I don't think it's too impressive, to be honest, but it definitely was a great performance by him, but I don't think he can compete with Nick and Xavier.
All right, thank you, Andrew. And we're going to go over to Xavier. Do you think that JP's no-hitter was impressive, or do you think it was just a fluke?
I believe that it was impressive. You know, he's just a really good player overall. He's had an amazing season. You know, obviously he's been a player of the game almost every single one of their wins. And you know, I think that any no-hitter is just it's in different circumstances it could be tough, but I think most of the time it is pretty tough to get one. And it just shows the love of the game that he has, and I think that for him mostly is just to stay level-headed the rest of the season. I think that they can get far in the playoffs.
Thank you, Xavier. And we're going to end off our Tuesday games with Nick. Do you think that the no-hitter will get to JP's head and make him go into a slump the whole season, or do you think he will stay straight and just go even farther for the end of the season?
Well, he's been pretty good on the mound. He's been way better than all around this year. He just got to keep straight. I mean, he was one of the worst teams in the league. And I mean, that team was just taking everything. It looked like, because when I was down there, I was just on Instagram and just looking at what was going on, and a lot of the strikeouts were just looking. And I was talking to JP after, and he said he wasn't really throwing a lot of like mixes of speed. He was just throwing fastballs the whole time. But I mean, it's impressive in some way, but again, he's just got to keep it straight and keep his mind on the playoffs, because that's what his team has to worry about.
All right, thank you, Nick. We're going to go over to our playoff predictions and action that's going to happen during the playoffs. And we have the Gators clinching the NL after their win yesterday. And we have the Blue Whales clinching the AL after their win today. And, guys, I have the biggest question for all of you. Who do you guys think will win in the NL, the Pounders or the Dinger? And we're going to start with Andrew. Who do you think is going to win the ALDS or the NLDS? I'm sorry.
The NLDS between the Pounders and Dinger, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So between those two teams, they both had their ups and downs this year, obviously. But I do think the Pounders are definitely the better team in this matchup, and I think that will come out on top pretty easily. Probably 2-0 sweep.
Yeah, you gotta believe that Pounders are going to be the favorites going into the NLDS, because the Dinger, after losing Xavier and Garrison, have not been on a good streak. And their squad of Zeke, Zenon, and newly found player Brian Lopez, they gotta step it up and try to pop off for the rest of the season. And we're gonna go over to Nick. Who do you think is gonna win between Pounders and Dinger in the NLDS?
I'm gonna take Pounders in 2. I think it's going to be a sweep for the Pounders. Dinger, I mean, we haven't seen anything from Brian Lopez yet, so he might be the greatest player ever. We just don't know about that yet. But, I mean, it just all depends on, but I do think Andrew and Navarro, they both get a start there, and they both shut him down. And it's going to be an easy sweep for the Pounders, and they get a sweet ticket to the old championship series.
That championship series will be really crazy when it does come to that time. And Xavier, who do you think is going to win, Dinger or Pounders?
Yeah, I think I agree with Andrew and Nick as well. I think I'm going to go with the Pounders easily in series sweep. However, Dinger could be in a worse situation. I mean, they're 2-4 still, same as the Pounders. However, Pounders do have that tiebreaker, and I think there's a scenario of them winning against them beating the Neverlands Friday and the Pounders losing to the Weasels. If that all happens, then Dinger could be the number 2 seed. However, I still have the Pounders winning no matter what.
All right, thank you, Xavier. We're going to go over to our AL, which is the Blue Whales clinched. And we have the 2 squads here. We have the Weasels and the Neverlands. But I don't really think I have to go over this. I think we all know who the fan favorite's going to be, and that's obviously going to be the Weasels because of the 0-6 start that the Neverlands are having. I think we can all agree on that, right, guys?
Yeah.
I do have one thing, though, to add.
Go ahead.
In that series. I believe that the Neverlands are going to take one of those games.
Ooh.
Shot in the dark, but I believe they'll come out strong in the first game, get the first game win, but the second game they're going to crumble, and then the third game they're going to be out of it. And yeah.
Nick,
I think the series is going to go down.
To add on that, I feel the same way, Andrew. I think if they do win one game, it'll be the same. It'll be the second game. Because I was talking to Mackie, and he's worried about if Connor and DePrater might not show up. So he's worried about that. But I do think they do. I think I'm going to stay. It's going to take 3 games to win, but I do think the Weasels will come on top. But yeah, I think the first game and the third game will be the Weasels, and then game 2 will be the Neverlands. If they get everyone to show up.
All right, thank you, Nick. Does anybody else have anything to add on? Yeah, no?
No.
All right, we're going to move on to our upcoming games, and we have games on Thursday and Friday. And Thursday's games are going to be Gators versus Wales and Pounders versus Weasels. And we're going to start with the Gators versus Wales. And these 2 teams are, the best in the whole entire MWBL. So this will be quite the matchup to watch. And we're going to start with Nick. Which team do you think will win?
Well, I was talking to JP, and he's on the Blue Whales, and I was talking to him, and he was saying that they're not gonna go full on in because they just want to keep everyone healthy for the playoffs, because both teams do have their number 1 seed, and the NL has a home field advantage in the playoffs, so they aren't too worried about that game, and I don't think our team is either. I think we're probably gonna have it's going to be either Jessica or Xavier on the mound. I cannot pitch, and JP cannot pitch either. So I believe it's going to be one of those games where it's just going to be nice and chill. When it comes down to the game, everyone just wants to stay healthy. And I think that's what our team and the Blue Whales are thinking, just to stay healthy for the play.
Yeah, 2 of the best pitchers in the league are having to sit out again in their own game against the best team in the opposite league. And then we're going to go over to Xavier. Do you think your squad can pull out, aka the Gators, do you think the squads can pull it off against the Whales?
Yeah, it's I believe I'm going to agree with Nick. It's going to be an all offense game. I think everyone's, like you said, going to want to stay healthy. But I don't know. I think the Whales are determined on going undefeated, and I think that they'll accomplish that. And they're going to be looking really good going into the playoffs.
All right, thank you, Xavier. Andrew, who do you think is going to win between the Gators and the Whales?
So both of them are without their top starter. Still think the Blue Whales are going to pull it off, though, because Colton is not going to be able to pitch, and if Mike is not there, he's not going to be able to pitch. Or he will be able to pitch, but he hasn't been showing up. But their bats are just too powerful, in my opinion, and I think they're gonna come out on top, but I think it's gonna be a really low scoring game though. I think about like 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, something around there. I think is what the score is gonna be.
All right, thank you, Andrew. We're going to go over to our second Thursday game, which is the Pounders versus Weasels. And both of these teams are pretty much the mid-tier teams of both leagues. And it'll be interesting since all of the matchups coming up are pretty much top-tier team versus top-tier team, mid-tier team versus mid-tier team, and lowest seed versus lowest seed. And we're going to start with Andrew. Do you think that the Pounders will pull through?
Yeah, I believe in our guys. I think we'll be able to pull this one off. It's going to be a close game. I feel like all games I say are going to be close. But that's just the teams we have in our league are all have some talent. So I believe the Pounders will pull this one off. Probably like 5-4 or something around there. So yeah, Pounders.
Go Pounders. Woo. All right, thank you, Andrew. And you will be starting on Thursday because Connor Navarro threw his heart out on Monday, so he will not be able to pitch. And we're going to go over to Xavier. Do you think the Weasels will cause an upset, or do you think the Pounders will come out on top?
I think the Pounders will take that one. They have a 2 seed. I think they have a lot of heart. They have so much heart for this game, and I think they'll get this win heading into the playoffs to gain some confidence.
All right, thank you, Xavier. We're going to go over to Nick. Do you think the Pounders will win, or do you think the Weasels will win?
I think there is something actually at stake here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think there is something at stake. So I think Pounders have to win to get the 2 seed. If the Pounders lose and Dinger wins, Dinger gets the 2 seed. So Pounders are playing for something. I do think the Pounders will pull it out and take that 2 seed away, and they'll get on fire going into the playoff.
All right, thank you, Nick. We're going to end off our show with the Friday games, which is Dinger versus Neverlands. And these two are being considered the worst teams in the league after recent events. And you got to believe that the Pounders are looking at this game, wondering and hoping that the Neverlands take this win so they can secure that 2 seed for themselves. And we're going to start with Andrew again, because I want to see his insight on if the Neverlands will cause the biggest upset of the season, or if Dinger will show that they're superior.
Bold prediction. Neverlands get the first win. Their first one of the year. Both teams struggling. We've seen that. They fought well. The Neverlands fought well last week, or yeah, I guess this week against the Weasels. I was honestly very shocked by their performance. Surprised they only lost by 1. I thought they were going to lose by like about 5-6, but they were right there the whole game, and they were not out of it. So yeah, Neverlands get their first win.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I know I am usually the host of the show, but I will chip in some of my opinion on this. And I do feel like the Neverlands will get their first win after all the momentum they've gained playing against the Weasels and scoring 3 runs, and Araceli Rubio popping that nice 3-run home run to get them all their runs. And we're going to go over to Nick. Do you think the Neverlands will steal a win this season against the Dingers, or do you think Dinger will take it?
I think I don't know who has the tiebreaker, but I do think the Neverlands are going to lose. But if the Neverlands do win, I don't know who has the tiebreaker. Do you guys know who has the tiebreaker against Pounders and Dinger?
Pounders do.
Pounders have the tiebreaker, so it wouldn't matter anyways. But I do think if the Neverlands win, but I don't think they're going to win. I think Team Dinger's going to take it. Just a little more experience, because I think that Neverlands are all 3 rookies, and there's at least one, which is Zeke, has some experience. So I do think they're going to take that one. So I'm going to take Team Dinger going in, and Team Dinger's going to win.
Mixed opinions between you and Andrews. One says the Neverlands, one says the Dinger, and it looks like Xavier's going to be the tiebreaker. Who do you think is going to win, the Neverlands or Dinger?
Well, prediction: Neverlands aren't winning. expect it.
Now that's toxic right there.
They're just
Wow.
Oh, wow,
Very-
dude.
They're a very young team. Urseli came out and said she's not going to show up Friday. She's going to be gone. She will be here for the playoffs, though, and they just need people to show up because I don't think they're even guaranteed somebody to show up yet. I think Camden said he would, but, this team just really hasn't showed up to any of their games this year, so we'll just have to see what happens. But I got Dinger.
All right, thank you.
One thing to add real quick. I do think Camden will show for the Friday game. He was talking about that.
Bold
Today.
prediction.
He said he might and he's saying he will show up probably, so we'll see how that goes. I do believe that he will show up.
All right, thank you, Nick. That's going to be the end of our show. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Tell your family and friends about us. Tell them about MWBL and follow us on Instagram at MWBL_football. And do you guys have anything to add before we end it off?
Neverlands are coming up next year. They're going to be World Series champs. My bold prediction next year.
Anyone else?
Go Pounders.
Go Neverlands.
Okay.
Go Neverlands.
Go Pounders. All right, thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.